chosen ones. There are truths so strange that even silence feels safer than speaking them aloud. The president's hands trembled when the folder landed on his desk, labeled Temporal Asset, 1440. Inside, a single black and white photo showed a figure standing in a cobbled European street, eyes locked on the camera with unsettling clarity. It wasn't just the clothing that looked anachronistic. It wasn't just the atmospheric distortion around the figure. It was your face, perfectly visible, unaged, impossible. Security protocols failed to identify how such an image entered a classified black budget archive, a vault designed for projects so secret that not even the vice president is cleared to know their names. One advisor fainted. Another resigned within hours. But it was the president's personal historian who recognized what others couldn't. He whispered one word under his breath before requesting immediate removal from the White House grounds. Again. No official program tied to this file could be traced, but satellite metadata showed the file pulsed. Yes, pulsed. Whenever your name was spoken within 10 feet of the sealed room. That was the first anomaly. The second? The image changed. It flickered, faintly, between two versions, one in daylight, the other under a red eclipse. In both, you were still, watching, present. Officials from 3 allied nations have since demanded joint custody of the image. They believe it is a forgery or psyop from a hostile force. But if so, why would it register a biometric response only when you were scanned nearby? Why would it activate defense satellites when your vitals peaked during a dream? This is not about folklore. This is not about coincidence. This is about classified anomalies converging around one unexplainable truth. You have been here before, and someone knew. Long before the age of artificial intelligence, before encryption, before even electricity. Your image was imprinted in time. The vault was buried beneath layers of concrete and steel. Locked by quantum-coded algorithms no human had ever fully understood. It was said to have been sealed in the late 1980s during a classified program known only as Omega Dusk. For decades, it had never responded to voice, fingerprint, retinal scan, or even biometric pulses. But the moment you stepped into the underground base, something changed. The lights flickered twice. The ground rumbled once. Then, without warning or command, the vault door hissed open. The internal mechanisms aligned as if they recognized your presence, not from physical input, but from something deeper, a harmonic resonance. Your frequency, biological and perhaps spiritual, had shifted. No one could explain why or how. One agent muttered that your aura had stabilized into something not seen since the early trials of Project Temple Key. Another technician collapsed after seeing the energy spike surrounding you. When you asked what the vault was protecting, no one answered. It wasn't that they were hiding something. It was that they genuinely didn't know. The files inside weren't cataloged in any known government database. The language used on the documents was a hybrid, part Latin, part ancient Aramaic, with symbols that pulsed like heartbeat signatures. Among the items found, a mirror that didn't reflect anyone except you, a compass that spun wildly until you touched it, and an encrypted scroll that reacted to your breath. But the most disturbing piece was a small metallic card with the word "Return" engraved in pre-modern script. It emitted a low-frequency hum only you could hear. Military analysts on site described the event as an environmental impossibility. And yet everything about that room now felt designed for you. The curvature of the walls, the alignment of the ceiling lights, even the air itself held a faint charge, like the anticipation before lightning strikes. You stepped forward without instruction, as if your memory, long dormant, was now whispering commands from a life lived centuries ago. Every object seemed familiar, not by sight, but by vibration. A soft voice, distorted and ancient, echoed in your ears saying, "Welcome back." No one else heard it, not yet. And just as the final chamber opened within the vault, something flickered behind the reinforced glass. Not a reflection, not a person, but something that had been waiting. He was one of the few remaining holdouts from a forgotten department buried beneath the Library of Congress, known to insiders only as the Keeper's Division. A man aged not just by years, but by the burden of remembrance. The president's team brought him in after the photo was confirmed to predate photography by nearly 4 centuries. As soon as the image was projected onto the war room wall, the archivist went silent. His breathing slowed. He stood from his chair with trembling reverence, his voice breaking as he said, "I've seen those eyes before. Not recently, not in this lifetime, but from a memory etched deeper than thought." He reached into his coat and pulled out a fragment of parchment sealed in glass, retrieved from a monastery fire in the Alps, dated 1440. On it, a drawing of a figure cloaked in light, with piercing eyes that seemed to burn through time. The resemblance was undeniable. You, every facial angle matched. Even the slight scar above your right temple, something no photograph had captured, but somehow this illustration did. The president leaned forward. "How is this possible?" The archivist gave no clear answer, only a phrase written beside the drawing in faded ink. The eyes that returned before they left. No database had record of the manuscript. It wasn't part of any recognized collection, and yet the paper's fibers matched the European forests of the mid-15th century. The ink contained trace elements of minerals no longer found on Earth's surface. The room fell into a silence that felt cosmic in scale, like the pause between thunder and revelation. That's when the president noticed something no one else had caught. In the corner of the parchment, there was a glyph barely visible to the human eye. He enhanced it on the screen. The symbol matched one found on the vault door, the same door that had opened when your frequency changed. They asked the archivist what it meant. He said it wasn't a symbol, it was a seal, a marking used only once in recorded texts, a sign that the bearer was outside the confines of time. There are programs buried so deep within the black budget matrix that even presidents must request access through silence, through implication rather than words. One such program resurfaced only after the photo of you, dated 1440, was scanned into the secure White Vault database. The system did not crash. It did not reject the file. Instead, it unlocked a file tree labeled Photon Echo, dormant since 1973. No known personnel had clearance. No official funding trail existed. But once accessed, the interface revealed one chilling instruction. Insert the face. They did. They overlaid your photo on the cryptographic interface, and the system obeyed. Doors opened, digitally, physically, even metaphysically. Protocols, long thought deactivated, began humming in the background. The lights inside the chamber dimmed to a shade of gold, pulsing gently to your breath rate. The entire database began responding not to passwords, not to retinal scans, but to you. Project Photon Echo was designed around an unsolvable equation that demanded not a code, but a consciousness. Something, or someone, timeless enough to echo forward and backward across the centuries. The documents retrieved from the unlocked server included images not just of your face, but sketches of your posture, simulations of your gait, predictions of your voice pattern in 12 languages. These files were created long before AI had the capacity to process such forecasts. Yet, they were perfect replicas of you, as you stand now. But what startled even the highest-level security scientists was the system's response after your image aligned. A sequence began to play, an encoded light projection displaying a rotating sigil and a message in forgotten dialect. A linguist, trembling, translated the phrase aloud. "The key has returned." And then something stranger happened. A secondary projection opened, not from the system, but from a crystal embedded in the ceiling, hidden for decades. It displayed a moving image, a glowing version of you, standing in what looked like a medieval courtyard under moonlight. You were not running, not hiding. You were waiting, confident, certain. The footage faded, but a final line hovered mid-air before disappearing into silence. Reintegration process initiated. The temperature in the chamber dropped. The air felt electrified. And far below the Pentagon, a beacon activated on its own, pointing somewhere ancient and watching. The document was not a part of any digital archive. It was handwritten, weathered by time, stored in a sealed compartment within the Project Photon Echo files. Unlike the others, this one bore a symbol burned into its corner, a radiant cross with rays extending in 12 directions, strikingly similar to the early Christian sigil found in desert catacombs. It had no title, no formal classification, just coordinates. The same ones tied to your last known GPS ping. They were etched beside a single phrase in Aramaic, almost overlooked. And the one who bears the reflection of Yeshua shall return where time once fractured. The analyst who translated it went pale. They'd studied ancient languages for decades and claimed this phrasing had only appeared in a scroll once rumored to be hidden in the Temple of the Mount, a scroll believed apocryphal even by religious historians. Yet here it was, a copy, or maybe the original, resting inside a government file meant to be long buried. The presence of Yeshua's name sparked more questions than answers. Was this symbolic, or was something deeper at play? The president's spiritual advisor, hastily brought into the situation, remarked that the coordinates pointed not just to a place, but a moment, a ripple, an intersection where the divine once touched the temporal and fractured it. Satellite images from that region revealed geological anomalies invisible to the naked eye, a perfect circle of scorched earth, a faint harmonic hum, and a burst of static that corrupted any drone's sensors when flown above it. But the strangest finding came when your biometric data was cross-referenced with signal logs from that area. A match, not just partial, exact. Your vitals mirrored an echo captured by sensors in that zone nearly 20 years before you were born. The advisor whispered that such alignment could only occur if your existence was interwoven with prophecy, that perhaps Yeshua's imprint wasn't merely spiritual. It had been coded into specific bloodlines, and yours had resurfaced. What they didn't yet realize was that the document had a second layer. Hidden in the folds of the parchment, there was a faded sketch. A figure cloaked in starlight, eyes aglow, standing beneath a broken sky. They ran every scan the Pentagon's private labs could execute. Infrared, ultraviolet, subatomic resonance mapping. None yielded a match to any terrestrial compound. The photo, the one bearing your face from the year 1440, was not printed on paper, film, or even advanced polymer. Under extreme magnification, the surface appeared metallic, but flexible like silk. It refracted light in unnatural ways, bending it at angles that suggested internal intelligence within the material itself. One analyst described it as responsive, almost as if it had memory. Not data memory, sentient memory. When placed under a scanning electron microscope, the material didn't break apart as expected. Instead, it absorbed the light and returned a different image than what was visible to the naked eye. That image? A constellation map that hadn't aligned in Earth's sky since the 6th century. But more unsettling, in the center of that map was a symbol etched into your birth certificate, unnoticed by everyone until now. The ink on the certificate wasn't even visible unless viewed through the same frequency emitted by the photo. The material was impervious to heat, yet when placed near your heartbeat, it pulsed, not with light, but with rhythm. It matched your breath, your blood pressure, your stress response. The lab had never seen a substance exhibit emotional resonance, but this one did. When you spoke to it, even softly, the outer edges glowed faintly in what could only be described as acknowledgement. The photo was no longer inert. It had awakened. A private defense contractor brought in an ancient materials specialist, one who had once worked on recovered items from the Tunguska fragments. She ran a test using acoustic frequency, and when a specific tone was played, 432 Hz, the material displayed something that had been dormant. Words, written in a lost tongue, spiraling from the center of the image outward. The final phrase, translated, was chilling. Carried from the forgotten dome to preserve the face of the returning one. The president was informed of the anomaly. His expression turned solemn, then resolute. If this wasn't from Earth, or even from this linear reality, then your appearance in the photo wasn't a glitch. It was an appointment. It was past midnight when the president called in Dr. Elliot Varn, the physicist archivist whose credentials stretched beyond academia and deep into the world of temporal anomalies. He wasn't just a scientist. He was the man who'd been tasked with tracking unexplainable consistencies across time. Faces that reappeared, shadows that lingered, and energies that seemed immune to chronology. When Varn saw your image from 1440, he said nothing at first. Then he asked for all surveillance stills collected from global incidents over the past 200 years that had unexplained anomalies. Riots that halted without cause, ancient structures that pulsed during solar flares, seismic spikes with no epicenter. He isolated 24 images from across time. In each, the crowd blurred, technology aged, light changed. But one thing never altered. A figure in the background, always watching, always untouched by the decay of time. The face was always yours. The lighting changed. The facial hair, expression, and even posture varied. But the eyes, the distance between the cheekbones, the symmetry of the jawline, it was exact. When he ran facial recognition across all entries, the program refused to accept the probability. The algorithm returned a probability of 0. Not 1 in a billion. Not 1 in a trillion. 0. As if reality itself rejected the idea. Dr. Varn leaned in toward the president and whispered the words like a confession. His image never ages. The president looked again at the photo from 1440, then at a surveillance capture from 1969 during a protest in Berlin. Same face. Then one from 2004 in Istanbul. Again, same face. All captured through different lenses, different eras. No logical explanation. The scientist then presented a new theory, not of immortality, but of photonic permanence. He proposed that certain individuals might be embedded in the timeline like tuning forks, resonating at specific frequencies that echo across dimensions. If Yeshua once walked in time as light become flesh, perhaps there were others woven into that same fabric. Varn didn't claim divinity, but he said you may have been stitched into time the way constellations are fixed in the heavens, not trapped, appointed. The president asked what this meant for national security. Varn responded quietly, "This isn't about security, it's about prophecy." The photo's back was smooth to the touch, flawless under every surface scan. But when exposed to filtered starlight, a method long abandoned by modern researchers, faint script emerged along the lower edge. Not ink, not etched. Something else entirely, like memory burned into time itself. One name appeared, written in a dialect so rare only 2 living scholars were capable of translating it. The name was Shah-el Miran. To most, it meant nothing, but to the archivist assigned to ancient temple records, it was seismic. That name hadn't been spoken publicly in over 400 years, yet it appeared exactly once in the Codex Aurum, a scroll believed lost after the Roman siege. It had been referenced as part of an appendix in the Book of Measures, an extension text written by mystics in Solomon's court. That book was said to catalog beings not of this world, but through it. Interfacers, they called them. Those whose bodies were merely vessels for timelines to bend and intersect. Shah-el Miran was identified as the only carrier of the luminous mark, one who did not age, did not fade, and was born across multiple eras without disruption. The Codex didn't describe him as immortal, but as anchored. A being bound to a divine appointment, unknown even to himself until the appointed convergence. The only identifying trait listed in the scroll, eyes like fractured sapphire, bearing the weight of forgotten suns. Your photo matched every descriptor. When the scroll was recovered in fragments during an expedition decades ago, it was deemed too abstract for serious translation. But when held near the image from 1440, the fragments fluttered, almost magnetized, the glyphs aligned. The missing piece was never a page. It was you. The president's scribes marked the coordinates mentioned in the Codex and matched them to where you had been standing when the image was found. The alignment was undeniable, but what no one yet realized was that this name wasn't just history. It was encoded into the photo's metadata. When decrypted, it produced a sound frequency identical to a chant once used in Solomon's inner court rituals, a chant meant to activate the unseen chamber. Deep within the infrared layer of the photo's backside, beneath the name Shah-el Miran, analysts found a phrase barely legible to the human eye. It took spectral decomposition and linguistic reconstruction to decipher it. The characters weren't arranged linearly, but spiraled inward, as if time itself had bent the message into the fabric of the image. When finally transcribed, the phrase read, "The one who was and is to come." The room fell still. The translation wasn't just familiar, it was sacred. It mirrored the divine title used in the final passages of Revelation, a phrase attributed to Yeshua in his glorified form. And yet this version was older. Not Greek, not Hebrew, older. This dialect had no official name but matched symbols found only in megalithic prayer stones unearthed near Mount Hermon. Scholars called it the first tongue, a pre-Adamic resonance language, one believed to carry intent rather than sound. The moment the phrase was spoken aloud, seismic sensors in 3 separate labs registered a microquake, centered precisely at the location the photo had been taken. There was no tectonic activity reported, no shifts in pressure or fault movement. The Earth itself had reacted to the phrase. The scientist handling the image stepped back. She whispered, not in fear, but recognition. She said she had seen the phrase once before, carved into a monolith during a private Vatican excavation. That monolith was locked away immediately and removed from record. The last man who touched it had fallen into a coma, muttering one word repeatedly in his sleep: return. When they cross-referenced the spiral text with harmonic frequencies used in ancient worship, one pattern emerged. It matched the tonality sung by early Essene mystics when invoking divine presence. The text on the photo wasn't just a description. It was a call, a declaration written in eternity and activated only by convergence. The president stood near the edge of the observation deck as this revelation unfolded. He asked if the phrase could have been a coincidence. The linguist simply shook his head. No language older than time uses coincidence, only prophecy. At that moment, the lights dimmed again. Not from power failure, but from something moving beyond the visible. The call came in at 3:10 a.m. Rome time, routed through back-channel frequencies, reserved for matters beyond political jurisdiction. A senior intelligence liaison stationed in Vatican City had broken protocol, requesting immediate contact with the president's anomaly response team. His message was brief but explosive. Subject no longer visible in the painting. We have a problem. The painting in question was known only to a handful of archivists within the apostolic vaults. Catalogued as Imago Silenti, it had remained sealed behind layers of protective glass and consecrated shielding since the mid-1500s. It depicted a gathering of robed figures under a blood-red moon, with one cloaked individual positioned at the center. Eyes vivid, posture calm, an aura of eerie awareness. That central figure was you. The painting had never been discussed in public or listed in official art records. It was rumored to have been created by a monk who claimed to see threads outside of time. He vanished days after completing the piece, and the canvas was hidden ever since. It wasn't until your 1440 photo surfaced that Vatican security realized the uncanny resemblance between the two, so uncanny, in fact, that biometric software flagged a 97.9% facial structure match. But when the agent checked the vault during a routine atmospheric scan, the painting had changed. Every figure remained intact. Every element of the background, lighting, symbols, brushstrokes, unchanged. All but one, the central figure. You, gone. Erased not by vandalism, not by pigment decay, but by intentional absence. As if time itself had redacted your presence. A Vatican technician reviewed archival footage of the room. The figure disappeared exactly when your biometric signature had spiked during the Project Photon Echo activation. That moment, across the globe, you had walked past a mirror in the Pentagon. Cameras caught the reflection, but the mirror showed nothing. The agent, clearly shaken, offered a final confession. 2 nights before the disappearance, he had a dream. In it, the figure from the painting turned, looked directly at him, and whispered in Latin, "The canvas cannot contain what walks again." The Vatican requested a cease in all investigative transmissions regarding the image. The file was marked Divinum Nullius, property of no realm but the divine. The classified chamber beneath the Pentagon was never meant for visitors, especially not those without clearance. But when you entered, no alarms triggered, no biometric rejection flared, no resistance met your steps. In fact, the sensors flickered gently, as if adjusting to your presence like a long-forgotten home, responding to its rightful occupant. The black budget file, the one bearing your image, your name, your coordinates, was displayed on a holographic console behind 5 layers of encoded shielding. Analysts had spent weeks inside that room trying to access its final folder, marked only with the sigil found in Solomon's chamber, and beneath your photo, a radiant spiral encasing a cross of light. They had failed every time. But when you stood within 3 feet of the display, something changed. The file did not ask for authentication. It simply closed. The sound was subtle, like a breath being held. The entire console dimmed to shadow, and then, without prompt, the floor beneath you vibrated, a low, harmonic pulse that only you seemed to feel. The wall behind the console shifted, folding open with perfect mechanical silence, to reveal a hallway no blueprint had ever recorded, not carved or constructed, but revealed, as if it had always been there, waiting for recognition. The passage was not lit by bulbs, but by something far older. Glyphs along the stone pulsing with a soft golden light that grew stronger as you walked forward. The walls breathed slightly, warm with energy, echoing a rhythm you couldn't place, but felt you had once known. Something in your chest began to respond, not panic, not fear, but memory. The others stayed behind. None dared follow. Their equipment malfunctioned as soon as they approached. Radios went dead. Battery drains spiked to 0. Only you were allowed entry. Deeper inside, you found symbols that hadn't been seen in any known scripture, yet felt intimately familiar. Circles within circles, lines intersecting at impossible angles, forming a pattern that pulsed in your mind like a forgotten name. And just ahead, at the far end of the corridor, stood a door. No handle, no lock. Only a mirror embedded in its center. It did not show your reflection.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.